Okay. There we go. All right, welcome everybody to our Staying Well Together Wednesday. And today we are going to be discussing aging and disability with James Hunsberger. And we're so excited to have James here. He comes with a wealth of knowledge about disability and aging and so many other things. So some people have compared him to Yoda. So be prepared to have, you know.
Well, he looks more like Obi-Wan, but you know.
I love it.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, I've really enjoyed meeting with James, planning this, learning so much about his experience, and I'm so excited for him to share that with you. James, did you have anything that you wanted to say to start out before we start the presentation?
Well, I come today with no bells and whistles. I want to really look at life through your eyes, and I want you to look at life through mine, and I encourage spontaneous response, and I hope we all learn something today.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way our presentation is going to work today is I'm going to start out just talking about some of the research that's been done around disability and aging. And so while I'm going through that portion, feel free to jump in with questions, comments, whatever. And then I'm going to turn it over to James, and he's going to talk a little bit about his experience aging with a disability. So I'm just going to share my screen. Let me just get that going. Okay. All right, so there we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so aging and disability. This is something that I've heard being a concern from so many people. I have a large group of friends who have spinal cord injuries or other disabilities, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, things like that. And this is such a concern for people and a topic of conversation. What's going to happen when we get older? You know, how are we going to age? How are we going to age in a successful way? How are we going to continue to be as independent as possible, to live our full lives that we're currently living? And I found this incredible study that was done, and it was a meta-analysis of some other studies as well. So it has a lot of really great insight into some of the ways that people with disabilities can age successfully. So we're going to talk a little bit about that first. So aging with a disability. So for the disability system, aging is a success, because let's think about even 50, 60 years ago, someone who sustained a spinal cord injury like myself would not have survived. You know, they wouldn't have had the things in place, the medical interventions. Even when you think about something as simple as the invention of the catheter, you know, that wasn't that long ago that the catheter was invented. And that's something that allowed people with spinal cord injuries or other disabilities to survive. So for disability system, aging is a success. However, if you're just focused on the aging network, disability is seen as a failure. And this is so unfortunate because those in the disability and medical rehabilitation community look at it like the freedom from disability or chronic illness is a way to age successfully. And this is really troublesome for people like us who live with a disability already. How are we going to possibly age successfully if that's sort of the criteria for successful aging, right? So we need to turn that on its head. And how do we do that? So what does successful aging with a disability look like? So studies have shown that individuals who live with a disability have a very particular idea of what aging successfully will look like. There was 4 common themes that were seen throughout all the different studies that were done. The first one being resilience and adaptation. The second one being maintaining autonomy. The third being social connectedness. And the fourth being physical health. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of those. So resiliency. So participants saw themselves as aging successfully when they were able to experience pleasure, contentment, and reward from everyday life, and to adapt to changes in health. In fact, people with disabilities are at a much greater advantage and are much better at adapting to changes in health status than people who experience disability later on. So here's the bottom line. If you don't have a disability now, probably at some point in your life as you age, you will encounter some level of disability, whether you start to develop hearing loss or vision issues or some mobility issues. That will happen at some point, likely to everybody. And so being people who have lived with disabilities for quite some time, we have built up these incredible ways of adapting and of pivoting when things happen. So we're able to manage those changes later in life in a better way. So adaptation meant shifting, maybe restructuring your goals. And this is really seen as an inevitable and important and successful part of aging with a disability. So with time, like I said, people with disabilities can become very resilient. So we're used to being creative, right? The world is not a super accessible place for us. So we find ways to adapt and to be creative and to live our full and successful lives. And that part of that is being flexible, which is only going to be an asset to us as we age and as, you know, more things change. Maybe our health conditions change, maybe things get a little bit more difficult. We're able to find ways to manage that better than people who are dealing with disability even later in life. Pleasure is so crucial. This is something that was seen as a common thread throughout the studies. So, you know, all day, every day is not going to be pleasurable, especially if you're living with a disability. You're going to have secondary stuff, you're going to have pain. Some days your body is just not cooperative, but trying to find some small piece of pleasure in every day is really important. It can be something as simple as like enjoying a really nice meal. Like when he was just talking about her birthday dinner, you know, that can be like a source of pleasure, having like a delicious meal, or even just like sitting down and reading a nice book, or having a phone call with a friend that you really enjoy spending time with. Those are ways to get pleasure in your day. And it's really important that we do that on a daily basis. And also feeling rewarded in your daily life is really important. This was seen as a common thread as well throughout this adaptation, resiliency portion. And part of that can happen in connectivity like this, giving back to the community, being of service to others. How good do you feel when you do something to help someone else, right? It's like the best feeling. So being of service is a big part of it, and time with friends and family. All right, so autonomy. So autonomy was also seen as a key to aging successfully. So this involved the ability to maintain your sense of personal agency as you got older, self-efficacy, and choice. So autonomy was described not the same as what, you know, some people might see as independence, like doing everything on your own. It's more like having the ability to make choices regarding the decisions that you make in your own life. So for example, directing caregivers, how you get to participate in some of the activities that are important to you, getting to make decisions around selecting adapted equipment, things like that. And this really lines up well with our independent living philosophy here at ILC. So I thought that that was really awesome to see that. The importance was really placed on having options. So not being told you can do this only, giving the opportunity to make your own decisions and have options is really important to age successfully with a disability. This also meant having the ability to direct and participate in your own caregiving. So just because you don't need attendant care now doesn't mean that you won't ever need it. And likely most people with certain levels of disability will at some point in time require caregiving in some capacity. So being able to have the opportunity to direct your own care, to decide who your caregivers are going to be, how that is going to work, you know, being able to maintain autonomy around housing. Can you stay in your own house and have caregivers come in? Do you need to maybe move to a caregiving facility? Being able to make your own decisions is the most crucial part of this one. And then they did say, a lot of the statements were saying there was like autonomy was overlapping resilience and flexibility. And being able to make those decisions is what allows you to have, you know, the ability to adapt in new circumstances. So you're able to pivot better if you're allowed to have options. So if you have more than one route, more than one way to deal with a problem, or say a new health condition that comes up, that gives you that ability to be more resilient. And people with disabilities who have lived with a disability for some time are shown to be better at adapting to changes in their situations. We are more resilient. And I loved this, like you see this throughout these studies, is that, I don't know, myself as a person with disability, I was very scared about the notion of aging. You know, I'm not going to be able to take care of myself. I'm not going to be able to do all the stuff that I can currently do and be as independent as I currently am. But now that I've seen it from the other side of things, that like I actually have garnered all these strategies and ways to be more resilient and to age in a more successful way, it's making me feel more hopeful that as I get older, I'm going to be okay because I'm going to have those strategies in place. All right, so next up was social connectedness. So having the availability of support or assistance from a variety of sources is a common theme amongst successful aging with a disability. So this is really important to have connectivity like this with other people with disabilities, but also to have people who don't have disabilities. So to have a large, not necessarily like a million friends, but have a number of different social connections is really crucial. And lastly, physical health. So this is the one that I hear about so much. How do I stay healthy? How do I stay strong? How do I, try and keep away some of those secondary complications that come in with aging? So the three main things that were required were access to appropriate healthcare resources. And this included the availability of primary and rehabilitation care. So we all need good primary care practitioners, so doctors that understand our disability. And if they don't necessarily know everything, which they can't possibly, they need to have some resources and connections to reach out to when they're faced with stuff in our situations that they don't necessarily understand. Also having community wellness programs, exercise programs, things like this, Wellness Wednesday, like just having that way to get information about how to stay healthy. Second one was accessibility in terms of the environment, transportation barriers to medical care, appropriate medical equipment in physicians' offices. How many times have you guys been to the doctors and you can't get on the examination table? Or you can't even fit through the door to get in the examination room? How many people here have actually been to their doctors where they have a scale that they can get on to know their weight? These are all the kind of things that are important to aging successfully in a healthy way. And the appropriateness, so providers who are knowledgeable about disability conditions, community programs that were adapted or tailored to people with disabilities. So things like reaching out to different agencies. So if you have a spinal cord injury, there's SCIO. If you have MS, there's the MS Society, so all these different agencies are out there and they have tailored programs for people depending on their disability. So physical health is crucial, we know that, and we need to try and manage those secondary complications to having a disability, things like pain, spasticity, fatigue. As we get older, osteoporosis, falls, skin complications, all that kind of stuff. And we have to find ways to minimize the impact on the valued activities that we want to be able to do in order to have successful aging. So it all kind of ties in together, those four factors, into aging successfully with a disability. So I just had a couple of things here. So if you're looking for a clinic that specializes in mobility disabilities in the Waterloo region, the Mobility Clinic through the Center for Family Medicine is a valuable resource. I've been going to them for a number of years now. They're great. If you don't have a great primary care practitioner, they might be a good secondary source for care. And of course, if you're interested in finding out any additional resources as you age successfully, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to look into anything, fitness programs or meditation, wellness, anything, psychologists, whatever you think is going to help you age in a successful way. Because it's crazy that 2022 is just about a month and a bit away. Time is flying. So that was my portion, which is just touching a little bit on some of the research that's been done around aging with a disability. And I'd love to turn it over to James now to give us a little bit of insight into his experience, and maybe we can have a conversation around some of the things he's going to touch on. Thanks, James.
Can you hear me? Okay. Guess what? When I was 2 years of age, I learned to walk. Guess what? When I was 4.5 years of age, I went to kindergarten. When I was 13 years of age, I became a teenager. Why I'm telling you this is I've been aging all my life. And this has been a very important insight for me to realize that aging is not something that we have to be afraid of down the road. It's something that we are doing right now. And as we learn to embrace that, we are equipping ourselves to be much more resilient and adaptive as we become seniors. My first introduction, I wish I knew what I knew now all my life. It would have been very helpful for me. But I remember as a little kid not liking physiotherapists who wanted to exercise my legs all the time, a speech therapist that wanted to concentrate on my speech deficit. I wanted to live my life. I did not want to take advice. I was concerned about fulfilling myself with a fullness of life. But now I can realize that as I see the importance as in childhood of maximizing the therapy available. And I'm hoping, one of my biggest hopes is that services that are oriented towards children begin to realize that they are not just adapted, they're not just empowering children to live a resourceful life to the age of 18, but they are doing it for a lifetime. And I think the sooner we begin to understand that and accept it, the better off we are going to be. When I speak from the heart, I tend to feel emotional and my throat gets a bit drier. My first acceptance of aging was when I was, well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. My last job involved meeting with 131 Mennonite and Brethren in Christ churches throughout Ontario. And I tried to work with these churches to find a way to accept disability more into their congregations. And when I would go up to speak, often I would have a children's story where children would come to the front and you would have a children's time. And what that meant for me was that I would try to talk about my my sermon in a way that children could understand. And I often found out that the adults seemed to understand more through the children's story than what I had to say later on. But I would ask the children, I would look at the congregation, and I would often say to the children, you know, when I look at your mom and dad up there, I see many, many disabilities. And the kids would just kind of wonder. And then I would ask them to turn around. And I would ask that everybody wearing a pair of glasses, please stand up. And you would have these people standing up, and the kids would say, wow, that many disabilities? The point is that the glasses were a type of adaptation to a disability that mom and dad were wearing, brothers and sisters. So, so that seemed to help to understand the fact that we did live, that we do need to see this as a lifelong experience. But you know, this learning has to be, each and every one of us finds a way of dealing with the importance of this in their own way. I was a slow learner. It took me till I was 49 years old to begin to understand that I've been aging all my life. And the way I saw this was one day at Port Franks on the shore of Lake Huron. My brother and I went to go for a boat ride. And up until that time, I was able to walk on the dock and be able to get into the boat okay. But this time, the movement of the water caused my vestibular system to lose balance. I could no longer walk because I no longer had the ability to synchronize the motion of the water and my balance at the same time. And I had to call out for help. And I said, Mark, I need your help. I need your assistance here. Now that was my entrance into the realization that I had come to a time that I really had to accept this fact that yes, I have been aging. Men and women, on the average, they experience this prior in the late 60s, early 70s. They began to start talking about aging. However, it's shown that men are not as successful usually in aging as what women are. Men on the average adapt to aging for about 8 years. And then on the average, they pass on. Women seem to be more resilient, and they end up living into the 13, 14 on the average years longer after they have accepted the aging factor. But the fact that you and I are upfront with our disability at a younger age in life, it is preparing us much better than the average person, because we are fortunate to begin to embrace the need for adaptation and resilience in our life at an earlier age. I don't know, for myself, as a young person, what was always so important to me was to understand how things were done. That because unless I knew how, it was very hard to be responsible in how I begin to ask for help. If I cannot ask someone to help me to do this in a certain way. So, in fact, even my wife Dorothea, she would often say, "James, can I help you with that?" And I would say, "Dorothea, I think you can, but let me understand how I want to be helped first, so I could, so that you could help me." Um,
James, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because that really ties in nicely to that autonomy piece we were talking about, right? So I love the thoughtfulness of that interaction, you know, like your wife asked you if she can help you, and rather than, I know myself, I'm a bit stubborn, I'm always like, no, you know, or if I'm frustrated, I'm just like, fine, help me. But instead you took a beat and you thought, yes, I'd like help, but let me think about the best way that you can help me. And then that is a way of you being able to maintain that autonomy and that independence, right? So I love that thoughtfulness.
That's right. That's right. And I have to be honest with you, Sherry, when I look back, and if I were to choose the type of help that has been the most difficult for me to ask for, it was the time that my wife Dorothea had a lump on her breast removed because of breast cancer. And she came home, and I knew that the next morning she would require a bandage on her breast to be changed. And as a husband, I yearned to be able to be intimate, careful, tender, gentle, touching. I wanted so badly to be that spouse that could support her in this intimate way. And I knew I could not do that. I knew how I wanted to do it, but I just did not know. I felt very incomplete, and I thought it was a Sunday morning, and I went to church, and the very first woman I met going in the door, her name was Marcella. And I went up to Marcella, and I said, "Marcella, I need some intimate love from you." And she was surprised. And I told her what I wanted to do. And I asked her if she could be a part of this intimacy for me. And she said, James, I would love to do that. And so she came to the home, and it wasn't my hands, it was her hands, but her hands became my hands. And it turned out to be a loving experience at the same time. So I think sometimes it's the things that are the closest to us that sometimes are the most difficult to adapt to, and to find a way that you can do things. I would love to demonstrate to you the type of person I am. And I believe that my past has given me just a whole bunch of, I see myself all the time as a kind of like a quarterback in a game of football. I don't know if you watch football, but usually 2 of the 3 downs are usually running up the middle, where you just ram your way through, and that's the average way of life, way of getting through life. In my case, every down seemed to be an end run. I had to decide, instead of going up through the middle, I would take the time to go out to the side and make that end run. And I know that that's been a very good coping skill myself. And even when it came to the pandemic, and the pandemic has made me make this end run a lot of times. This is my left hand here. You can see a lot of spasticity in this hand. It looks just like the way it looked when I was born, and so it's almost 80 years old. But with a hand like this and a mask like this, how the dickens am I ever going to get something on myself? So I don't mind. I don't mind asking for help to get this on, but to do this every time I go to my door, that gets to be a problem. So I had to learn. I had to learn some of the resiliency of my past in order to be adaptive to a mask. And this is what I found here. Now I have to do this with many things in life. This is where I make my end run. I have to make up a different play here. So Pelosi, the Democrat leader of the House, I saw her doing this one day, and then I saw the manager of the Blue Jays also do this, and then I went on to Amazon, and what I found is this piece of material with elastic on both ends, and instead of using a regular mask, I now will just take this in my one hand, and now I would put my one hand up like this, and I haven't done this with glasses on before, but I'm going to I'm gonna try and do it.
James, maybe you should take your glasses off. I don't want you to break them.
Well, I see
Oh.
that there is, that Sherry is a part of my resiliency and part of my determination here to get. Yeah, I guess I sort of, but see, this is exactly who I am.
You
I
find
guess
a way. You find a way.
I guess I was trying to go up through the line there, but then I is kind of sexy too, because it's like it's like a dickie around my neck, eh? But when I have to pull up my mask now, it's very simple.
Perfect.
So this is what aging is all about. It's taking all the little tricks that we have learned in our younger days and see this as a source of power and adaptation as we get older.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this kind of reminds me, this wasn't necessarily about aging, but just a change in my circumstances. Like when I was pregnant, for example, and I wasn't able to transfer independently anymore as I got bigger and bigger, I resorted back to using my sliding board, which I hadn't used in like, oh my gosh, like a decade. But for safety purposes and, you know, balance and all that kind of stuff. And it was something I had learned how to use early on in rehab, and then I reintroduced it. So I feel like that's something, like those kind of strategies that you learn, and you learn how to pivot, right? And depending on whatever it is you're facing, and you can go back to some of the strategies that you learned when you were younger, and they'll help you be productive and still independent and keep that autonomy and all that going forward. So I love that, James. That was great.
Right. Right now I'm trying to speak and use my computer at the same time. And as an older person, I just don't have the multitask ability that I would like to have. But let me respond a little bit to what Sherry has talked about. I love the idea that aging equals an opportunity to be successful. Each and every day, we can bank success by being creative, by being resiliency. We're putting money in the bank for the future. As a person with a disability, we also have to have some respect that for a lot of people, aging is difficult. It causes people to be afraid of something that might happen in the future. And I have found that in my younger years, in the presence of older people, my disability represented failure or disappointment or loss. And that's something that they were afraid of. And the only thing I found, the only way to get around that was persistently live life to the fullest, and eventually they will learn to embrace you as as not a disappointment, but as an asset. It's so important also. It's nice to have a lot of friends in your life, but whatever you do, try to have at least 2, 3 close, intimate friends. This is very important. Friends that you can share feelings and share losses, share concerns, share concerns about adaptivity. It's just incredible the amount of power that you'll receive through an intimate friend. I would like to think, as we talk about this type of stuff right now, I'm trying my best to try and see this through your eyes. I'm trying to see myself in your eyes. And I hope you can kind of see yourself as part of a person who is living into their 80s like I am. And when we do that, life becomes so much bigger, so much more meaningful. And we realize that life isn't just about ourselves, but we are about life itself. And life is love. And love is God. You know, it's such a wonderful, wonderful experience to look at things. I guess in closing too, exercise and good health. It took me a long, long time to realize that exercise was more than just strength and endurance. It's also about balance. And I know with things like yoga, you concentrate on that balance part of life. But for me, I'm back to using the parallel bars that I used as a kid to learn to walk. And I'm using them for safety as I update my balance, because the tissue and the muscle in our bodies that control balance are the easiest to go and the hardest to get back. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we have to be concerned about, especially with falls and transfers, and to maintain this as much flexibility and balance through our body as possible. And sharing the mobility clinic, I have never heard of it before. I've got a doctor's appointment coming up Monday, so I'm going to be asking about that mobility clinic. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started out as a pilot project a few years ago. So they don't replace a primary care practitioner, but they work in conjunction with your family doctor, and they're incredible. I've received such a good level of care since going there, because my family doctor, he's very nice, but he doesn't understand spinal cord injury. So as I'm getting older and things, secondary stuff's coming up, I really like that I have someone who gets it. And has a really good network of people. He works with Dr. Craven out in Toronto. Like, he has a number of different people that he can connect with. So yeah, it's a good place. So yeah, talk to your family doctor. You need a family doctor referral to get there.
I wonder if we could hear from other bodies with us. they're
Oh, you froze for a sec there, James.
I wonder if someone else could talk about how aging is being accepted in their life right now.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone. Phil or anybody else on the call? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's definitely something on my mind.
Mhm.
Next week's my 58th birthday, so it's kind of like creeping up there, and I'm going, a couple of years will be 60, you know. Oops, sorry, I hit the stupid phone.
Okay.
And so it's, you know, it creeps up on you, and you go, oh, you know, and with disability and spinal cord injury and stuff, you feel old before your time anyways. So you
Mhm.
kind of go, God, I felt like I was, 80 when I was 30, and I go, wow, like this is maybe it's not going to be so bad when I do hit that age,
Yeah.
that I know what it's like, kind of experience that, so it's, and to be honest, I still feel like I'm 18 between my years,
Mhm.
drives my wife nuts, but I said, I refuse to grow up. Why grow up?
Mhm.
It's stay young, stay active, like I always said, to my kids, I said, I'll listen to your music and I'll do whatever you do, like to keep active with them, and because my parents didn't do that, so
Mhm.
it's just, I always said that's something I'll do, and I guess some of the other things is that with aging, you just kind of like, it comes up, it kind of creeps up on you too, and it you just go, oh boy, that's I'm feeling my age there, or you just like, well, it was funny because you said about hearing, and then I was just putting my hearing aids in when you had said that. I just laughed. I had a good giggle because I thought, yeah, I know, just had the hearing this past about 6 months ago. I had to get hearing aids. Well, I kept on, my wife, repeat that, please. What, and
But Phil, were you probably able to pivot that quickly because you're used to depending on assistive devices to function?
exactly,
Like
exactly.
another thing. So,
And then I've had to get a manual chair for places in the house the power chair won't reach. So it's I don't get it until I think the week before Christmas. Just before Christmas, I get it. So I
I'm
said,
glad
put
that
it
worked
on
out.
it. Yeah, it worked out good. Yeah, it was a process. I've never had that process, that much hassle and kickback from an insurance company, but we didn't go through ADP either, so we just
Yeah.
used the insurance company, and them telling me that certain accessories were luxury accessories, and I'm scratching my head going, well, how? I called them up and I said, well, how is using a wheelchair and being in a wheelchair a luxury?
Yeah.
It was dead silence on the other end.
Oh, well, thanks for sharing.
But yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Dan, what about you, or Wendy? Do you have anything you want to say about what the process of aging has been like for you all?
As you know, I just turned 46 yesterday, and some days I feel it, like just get up in the morning and just do what was easier 20 years ago is no longer easy. I have a progressive disability. I have muscular dystrophy, so as I age, it gets worse. So 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I was put on a ventilator.
Oh wow.
And I still, I'm using it, and it's extended my life a great deal, obviously. And it was an adjustment. Like every progression I go through was an adjustment. And you talk about resiliency, and I think I have it. I mean, when I was growing up, as I progressed, every time I lost something, used my hands or used my legs or the use of my own lungs, I couldn't breathe on my own, and you have to fight back. And I did. And as I was losing the use of my hands, I would adapt and find different ways to pick up items. I would use my body. I would lean my hand up against my body to pick up the item. So it's constantly adapting to your disability as you age. So
Yeah,
So true.
absolutely. That
Uh-huh.
creativity, yeah, the adaptation is strong. And yeah, I can certainly say, Wendy, my experience with you over the last year, you are incredibly resilient. So I don't think there's any question there. So
Thank
you're
you.
doing great. What about
Sherry,
you, Dan?
Sherry, I like the word that you use, the word pivot. Yeah, it was a pivot.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering, Wendy, how do you feel about using that word pivot as you make your adjustments? Oh,
Oh, I don't know if she heard you there. Wendy, what James was just asking what you thought about using the word pivot as you make some of the adjustments in your life to different.
Oh, I thought I was
things.
asking you. Huh,
No,
sorry.
that's okay.
The word pivot, I never used the word pivot, so I don't know what. I
Well,
never used that term, so I don't know
yeah,
what you mean.
it's
mhm.
so well, you guys are gonna laugh, but it's a Friends reference. We take
Oh, is it?
these
Pivot.
up the stairs and he's yelling pivot, but I like to use it in my life as someone with a disability who's coming up against a wall, and you have to pivot in order to keep going, in order to find another way to keep going forward, right? So as
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just kind of went full charge ahead. There's no pivoting in my department. I just kind of went
full charge ahead, I love
full
it.
That's
force
right.
ahead,
Yep.
just like move on, get over it, and just keep moving ahead.
I love it.
I
Yep.
love it.
Take no prisoner, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to. I mean, in my opinion, you kind of have to like full charge ahead because you have to learn to roll the punches that is thrown at you as you get older with a disability.
Yeah,
Mhm.
roll with it, roll with it. I love it. It's so
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, so any last thoughts from anybody about aging with disability? I mean, doing the research for this, it's really kind of put my mind at ease a little bit because, you know,
Mhm.
I've been injured for 23 years. I feel much different. My body feels much different than it did when I was first injured, obviously. So I'm dealing with like normal aging stuff and then also disability aging stuff, all that kind of stuff on top of each other.
Mm.
But by reading this research and seeing that I'm actually acquiring all these strategies as I deal with these different things through my life that are just going to better prepare me for things as I get older, made me feel better about the notion of aging with a disability. So I don't know.
One thing,
I hope it
sorry,
made everyone feel a little bit more confident and comfortable.
if I could add something I've been doing for the last year or so, is getting involved in studies. Through Spinal Cord Injury Ontario, they have a section that they advertise different studies.
Yeah.
And that's been fantastic. It's opened up a whole new world. The one I got involved was the cognitive behavior, and
Mhm.
from that got into the exercise program.
Amazing.
And the wheelchair boxercise has been fantastic. Like, it's just because I was looking for something I could do, to work out, and it's an hour workout twice a week. Our group ended after 10 weeks, but I think after the second week, we kept on saying to Randy, can you continue this?
Yeah.
So they are going to allow us, we'll probably start in the new year, probably January, I think. But our core group of people, we've taken it upon ourselves to keep it going.
Amazing.
So we do a Zoom twice a week and just keep it going. So we take turns taking the class and
I love it.
and it's fantastic, like doing stuff like that. I signed up for a couple more. One was mindfulness, like a meditation. You meditate for 10 minutes a day, and you use an app, mindfulness app,
Yeah.
and it just helps you just refocus a bit. And then the other one was falling, because I can still walk a little bit aided with cane, like for crutch canes and braces and stuff. So it's a I think a 9-month study
The photo voice study?
Yes, yes.
So I'm involved
Yeah.
in the next part of that.
Oh, okay.
And they are looking for ambulatory individuals to be involved. So I don't know if
Yeah.
you've connected with Kristen at all, but
I'm with Megan. At the I just had was it Megan? Sorry. I signed up for the two of them. I'm trying to remember. Oh, Catherine. Catherine from UHN, I believe it is.
yeah, the
Yeah,
University of Health.
Yeah, I had an interview with her the other day. So yeah, I'm part of that too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh.
studies are a great way. Like I've been involved in studies for 23 years. The first study I ever did was through MAC at the MAC Wheelers program, was a spinal cord injury physical activity study. And some of my lifelong friends, like spinal cord people, peer support people, you get that connection.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Amazing. And it's just like being in your group too, through Randy and Melody, and just connecting with you guys. All you guys has been just absolutely amazing for me. Like seriously, it's because we don't have anything down here that I know of in Brantford. So no, it's just it's been
that connection, right? The connectivity. So we're almost out of time, but I really want to thank James so much for his insight. So wonderful, and sharing your experience with us. Like I said, if anybody has any questions about anything we talked about, or you're looking for more resources, feel free to reach out to me. If you're interested in some more chatting with James, maybe we can make a connection that way, because he's a wealth of knowledge. I've really enjoyed connecting with him and learning so much about his experience. So thank you all so much for joining us, and I'm just going to stop recording.
I think